pleasure to meet you, Gaya Herrington. You are a sustainability researcher, and as far as I understood by researching your work, your main idea is that, that the structures that we currently have on the planet are overwhelmingly operating on an illusory mindset that growth can go on forever, maybe, indefinitely, which is fundamentally absolutely wrong and is the wrong approach, because it should be exactly the other way around, that our processes on the planet as well as organizations and societies have as a priority to be created and built up by the measures of the planetary boundaries
yeah.
and of what we are, humans.
Yeah.
Is it right?
That's correct.
That was
yes.
my impression.
Yes, I
Okay.
was a sustainability. I'm still a sustainability researcher, but I ended up concluding that we cannot become anywhere near sustainable unless we change our economic system, which is so focused on perpetual, indefinite growth. And so now I'm also, you could actually argue, I'm a well-being economist, as I call myself. I'm an economist, but typically when someone says they're an economist, they say they're neoclassical economists, and neoclassical economics says, well, the growth is always progress. We should always have that. And the neoclassical economics is just one school. There are many others. And so well-being economists say, well, that's not possible. You just mentioned to me that you like physics. You are familiar with the second law of thermodynamics in that case. And it's the perpetual growth on an abundant but finite planet is inherently at odds with this physical law. And economics is not a physics. It's not an exact science. It's a social construct. So it's an alpha science, so we all get a say, it's political. So we decide what the design is of the economy and what we think its ultimate goal should be. And I think the goal of, as an ultimate goal, growth is foolish, obviously, it's not possible. And it's not progress. In certain cases, it's clearly very destructive in terms of nature, but also socially degenerative. And so we don't have to be anti-growth, but we just say, well, what do we really want? And we know what we want because we're already kind of pretending that's really what we do, right? So if you work at a company, the company never says, it's endless profits every quarter. But that is really what their goal is right now. But they're pretending it's not. They're saying we have this vision for society because we all actually feel that's kind of what they should do. So I just say, okay, let's just do that for real then. And so we can still have growth if it contributes to well-being, but if it doesn't, we should not. And so the ultimate goal of the economy should be instead of growth, it should be human and ecological well-being.
Wow, that was a lot of information. But if one thing I know for sure, if I would be a CEO of a big company, I would like to silence you with such ideas, because it's absolutely to the contrary of how our planet is, so how it operates, on which basis. What is your idea? How could your philosophy be implemented in the practice? And where is it the best to start? I guess it's like a colossal problem complex, which is probably very hard to address, but especially to do something with it practically, to make steps.
Yes, so if you look at surveys, where you talk to people as a human being directly as an individual, you actually see that an overwhelming majority, especially in Europe actually, is very much in favor of so-called post-growth values. So post-growth it's more than just like green or eco or like net zero or something. It's what I just said, profit or anything else should really be in service of life and not the other way around. So we can all do that wherever we are, and it needs to happen in all our structures. You mentioned the CEO. Maybe, but it depends on which company the CEO is at. If you are a very large multinational that's stock listed, yes, you probably have that growth. No, you have that growth imperative in your legal structure. So that's an issue. But a lot of companies in Europe are actually totally steady state, and they're totally happy to be there. So you have a lot of ownership structures that can be very different. And what it comes down to, which is very interesting, I talk a lot about economics, and I did a data comparison about the limits to growth model, which was from the MIT in the 70s that predicted what would happen if we keep pursuing growth. So this is all very, you could say, it's very much a numerical, very quantitative. But there's also a whole qualitative aspect around economic systems change. So it goes down to the stories we tell about who we are as human beings, how we make decisions, and also what kind of world we may hope to live in. And if you go down there, you see the story that two competing stories, kind of. These structures have mostly been built on the story of separation. So, we are selfish, short-term thinking, violent beings. The Hobson story, right? We're driven by fear and a hunger for power. And we are kind sometimes, but just a tactic to propagate genes. We know this story. We've all been told this. Basically, in the story, we're sociopaths. We can never have enough. We're selfish maximizers. And we can act that way, especially when our needs are not securely met. But when you look at social science, when you look at how people actually behave, then once their needs are securely met, they're actually much more altruistic than this Homo economicus could ever be. And we're incredibly pro-social. So social scientists, anthropologists, or evolutionary biologists, they will say, well, actually, our brains were formed in the Paleolithic, and we were incredibly social at that point. The violence levels were low. And that was, by the way, not a stable climate. That was an ice age, and we weathered that. Why? Because our strength it's not survival of the strongest, it's survival of the kindest. This is our biggest strength. And so that's the story, I think, of interdependence, in which we are nature. And there is no trade-off between social and environmental benefits. It only looks that way because growth is the invisible non-negotiable. But once you take that out, you see that it goes back to the dynamic that it's always been, which is mutually reinforcing. And I think that kind of wisdom is still best preserved in indigenous populations today. They will tell you all thriving is mutual. We can't really be happy if the world around us is not flourishing too. And so I think we need to start building out this story that I think describes us much better in our structures and everything, that from our built infrastructure to terms of how we set up our companies, how we get ownership. What does investment mean, for example? Is it a claim to future profits, or is it a commitment to our common future? And this is how we should rebuild all of our structures at this point. And I know that sounds like a lot of effort, and it is, but quite frankly, the effort is guaranteed because we're living in a climate in total ecosystem collapse. We're already at tipping points. So some of these structures are going to come down anyway. And so I don't want to minimize collapse, but we do have, in those cracks of the falling system, we also have a potential to rebuild together again.
Yeah. You are saying so many really good things, but I'll have to ask you one last one. Do you really honestly see a chance that this could change globally? I mean, I'm aware that in a way it must change because there won't be any escape, but the way it'll go down, that'll decide the fate of many, many, many people on the planet. So do you think there's really a chance that we can make it without a huge fucking catastrophe?
I think we're going to have all of it. I think we will see pockets around the world where it's going to be catastrophic. And we will also see pockets in the world where people are going to bind together. And I know that because, first of all, it's already happening around the world. People have always organized with different modes of ownership and how to make profit without profit maximization. and setting up community-led, place-based, rooted in that local ecosystem with traditional knowledge of how to do that without destroying it, but actually regenerating the stuff around you. That's already always been done. And what you also see is how communities and people come together in disasters. So when we have an earthquake or a fire or a hurricane, what you always see is it's not these two provisioning functions that we're used to, market or government, right? That's the only option, the only two options we've been told. But those are typically not there in an event. And so when that happens, the community always jumps in. And it's always the same. It's not, we're told in popular media that we're just mass panicking. It's not actually, again, in reality, what we do. In reality, as soon as the imminent threat is gone, people stand up and they go, what do you need? What do we have? And they start working. People open up their houses. This guy with the boat cruise that typically rips tourists off goes out to get medicine, transfers people out, get medicine back. So this is who we are, actually. This is what we do. And this is an event that I'm describing. The collapse is a process, but our brains are wired for that. So we have to build that muscle back up, that muscle that we were told doesn't exist. Because we're just consumers, we're engaging in transactions in the market and otherwise government steps in. But this has actually always been our best ways of organizing these community-led, place-based provisioning systems. And that's what we have to do again. And yes, I do believe that we will also see that.
Thanks, Gaya. You're a delight. So thank you for this talk. It was wonderful. Thanks.
I agree. Thanks for having me.